He bought me a penthouse. Then I learned why he needed me gone. The realtor placed the keys in my palm while my husband stood behind me, silent. The metal was cold, heavier than it should have been. 3 keys on a leather fob with the building's logo embossed in gold. The penthouse lights flicked on, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing the city stretched out below like a glittering carpet. Marble floors, designer furniture, everything pristine, staged, untouched. My stomach dropped, not from excitement, from wrongness. Calden stood near the door, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. He wasn't smiling, wasn't excited, just watching, waiting. The realtor gestured toward the kitchen, talking about imported countertops and smart appliances. Her voice felt distant, muffled, like I was underwater. I turned to Calden. "This is ours?" He nodded once. Short, clipped. "It's yours. Yours, not ours." The distinction hung in the air like smoke. The realtor excused herself, said she'd give us privacy. The door clicked shut. Silence filled the space. Heavy, suffocating. I held the keys tighter. "Cal, what's going on?" He didn't smile. He watched me like he was waiting for something to end. His jaw was tight, eyes flat. The way he looked at me reminded me of someone watching a timer count down. Not angry, not sad, just finished. "I thought you'd like it," he said. His voice was even, practiced, like he'd rehearsed this. "It's beautiful," I said slowly. "But I don't understand. Why now? Why this?" He shifted his weight, looked past me toward the windows. "You've been saying the house feels too big, too empty." I had said that, once, months ago, during a fight about how we never saw each other anymore, but this wasn't a response to that. This was something else. "So you bought a penthouse?" "I wanted you to have something that felt like yours. Mine, not ours." Again, I watched him carefully, the way his hands stayed in his pockets, the way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes, the way he stood too far away, like proximity might give something away. "When did you buy this?" I asked. He hesitated. "Last month." I asked why I couldn't stay at the house anymore. He said, "This is better for everyone," and looked away. Everyone. The word landed wrong, heavy, loaded. "Everyone?" I repeated. He cleared his throat, ran a hand through his hair, a tell. He always did that when he was lying. "I mean, for us, for you. The house has security issues, the neighborhood's changing. This building has 24-hour concierge, cameras, safer. I'd lived in that house for 6 years. Our house, the one we picked together, the one with the garden I planted and the reading nook I loved. No one had ever mentioned safety concerns. No break-ins, no threats, nothing." "What security issues?" I asked. "Just trust me, this is better." He checked his watch. "A Patek Philippe I'd given him for our 5th anniversary. I have a meeting. Take your time. Look around. The movers will bring your things tomorrow. My things, not our things. You're leaving? I'll be back later, maybe." Maybe. He moved toward the door. I wanted to grab his arm, to demand answers, to scream. But I didn't. I just stood there, keys biting into my palm, watching my husband walk away. That night, alone in glass and steel, I realized the penthouse felt less like a gift and more like exile. I sat on the couch, cream leather, cold and stiff, and stared at the city lights. Everything was too clean, too perfect, too empty. Not a single photo, not a single book, not a single thing that felt like me, like us. I called Calden. It went to voicemail. I texted. No response. I poured a glass of wine from the built-in bar and walked to the bedroom. King-sized bed. White linens. Untouched. The closet was empty except for the hangers, all evenly spaced, waiting. I opened the drawer of the nightstand. Nothing. No receipts. No notes. No sign anyone had ever lived here. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone, scrolled through photos of our house, the kitchen where we cooked together, the living room where we watched movies, the backyard where we hosted dinners. This place had none of that. No history, no warmth, no us, just luxury. Cold, expensive luxury. And I realized Calden hadn't bought me a home. He'd bought me distance. My name is Saren Hallwick, and the day my husband bought me a penthouse was the day I stopped being his wife without knowing it. I spent that first night replaying every conversation we'd had in the last 3 months. Every late meeting, every canceled dinner, every excuse. I'd told myself he was stressed, that work was demanding, that we were just going through a rough patch. But this wasn't a rough patch. This was premeditated, calculated. He'd planned this, purchased this, moved me without asking if I wanted to be moved, and he'd done it quietly, quickly, like he was trying to erase me before I noticed. I didn't sleep. Just lay there in that cold, beautiful bedroom, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of what I couldn't yet name. By morning, I understood. The penthouse wasn't a gift. It was a transaction, a way to move me out of his life without the mess of confrontation, without the guilt of asking me to leave. He'd bought my compliance with luxury, and I'd almost accepted it. Almost. But not anymore. I convinced myself it was love expressed poorly. Wealth does that, I thought. Calden came from money, old money, the kind that solved problems with checkbooks instead of conversations. I'd known that when I married him, loved him despite it. Or maybe because of it. I told myself the penthouse was just another example of that. Of him trying to show love the only way he knew how. By providing, by protecting, by giving me something beautiful and assuming that was enough. So I unpacked, hung my clothes in the enormous closet, arranged my books on the built-in shelves, set up my laptop in the second bedroom he designated as my office. I tried to make it feel like home. Tried to ignore the nagging feeling that something was deeply fundamentally wrong. When Calden finally called 2 days later, I didn't mention it. Didn't ask why he hadn't come back, didn't demand explanations, just asked how he was. He said busy, said he'd visit soon, said he loved me. The words felt hollow, but I said them back. Because that's what you do. You pretend, you adjust, you convince yourself things are fine, even when they're not. He visited less, texted more. Stayed late without explanation. The first week he came by twice, stayed for an hour each time, looked around like he was inspecting a hotel room, not visiting his wife. Asked if I had everything I needed. I said yes. He nodded. Left. The second week he came once, stayed 30 minutes, said he had dinner with clients. The third week he didn't come at all, just texted. How's the place? Settling in okay? Need anything? I responded. Kept it light. Didn't push. But I noticed the shift. The way his texts got shorter, the way his responses took longer, the way he stopped asking about my day and started just sending logistics. Movers coming Thursday. Building manager has your parking pass. Security code is 4782. Transactional. Distant, like I was a tenant, not his wife. I started calling him more, to hear his voice, to feel connected. Half the time, he didn't answer. When he did, he sounded distracted. Can I call you back? I'm in a meeting. Let's talk later. Later never came. The house staff stopped responding to my messages. I texted Margot, our housekeeper, asking if she could bring some things I'd left behind. Books, photos, a sweater. She didn't respond. I called. Voicemail. I texted again. Nothing. I tried Paulo, our gardener. Same thing. Radio silence. Then I called the house landline. No answer. I thought maybe they'd been let go. Budget cuts. Calden had mentioned restructuring at work. But that didn't make sense. We weren't struggling, and even if we were, he would have told me. Wouldn't he? I drove by the house one afternoon, just to see. The lawn was freshly mowed, the hedges trimmed, the windows clean. Someone was still working, just not responding to me. I sat in my car across the street, staring at the house that used to be mine. The curtains were different, cream instead of the soft blue I'd chosen. And in the driveway, a car I didn't recognize, sleek, black, expensive. I took a photo, zoomed in on the license plate, then I drove back to the penthouse, and didn't mention it to Calden. When I showed up unannounced, my key no longer worked. I needed closure, or maybe just answers. So I drove to the house again. This time, I didn't just sit outside. I walked up to the front door, pulled out my key, the one I'd had for 6 years, the one I'd used 1,000 times. I slid it into the lock, turned, nothing. It didn't catch. I tried again, jiggled it, pushed harder. Still nothing. My chest tightened. I rang the doorbell, waited, footsteps inside. The door opened a crack. Margot stood there, face pale, eyes wide. Mrs. Hallwick, why didn't you answer my texts? I asked. She glanced behind her, nervous. I'm sorry. Mr. Hallwick said not to. Said not to what? She didn't answer, just stood there blocking the doorway. I need to come in. I left some things. I can't. I'm sorry. She closed the door, gently but firmly. I stood there, key in hand, staring at the wood. My own house. And I couldn't get in. I called Calden. He answered on the third ring. Why doesn't my key work? Silence. Then, it's a temporary security update. I'll get you a new one. He said it was a temporary security update, but he never gave me a new key. I waited a week, then 2. Every time I asked, he had an excuse. I forgot. The locksmith is backed up. I'll drop it off soon. But he never did. And slowly I realized he didn't want me to have one. He wanted me in the penthouse, away, separate, out of the house, out of his life. I stopped asking, started watching, started paying attention to the things he didn't say, the way he changed the subject when I mentioned the house, the way he avoided coming to the penthouse when he knew I'd ask questions, the way he started talking about my space and your space instead of our home. I wasn't imagining it. This wasn't paranoia. This was pattern. This was strategy. And I was the one being strategically removed, quietly, carefully, without confrontation, without honesty. Just keys that didn't work and texts that said soon and a husband who no longer looked me in the eye. The penthouse wasn't a gift, it was a cage. Beautiful, expensive, isolated, and I'd walked right into it. I noticed unfamiliar items in the house through the window, small, feminine, intentional. I parked down the street this time. Walked up quietly, didn't knock, just looked through the front window. The living room curtains were partially open. I could see inside. The couch had new pillows, cream with gold embroidery. I'd never bought those. On the coffee table, a candle, tall, white, lit. The kind I'd asked Calden to get months ago. He'd said he forgot, but someone had remembered. I moved to the side window. The dining room. Fresh flowers on the table. Lilies. I hated lilies. Always had. Calden knew that, but someone else clearly didn't, or didn't care. I stood there, heart pounding, staring at the small, deliberate changes. The things that said someone else was living there. Someone else was choosing pillows and lighting candles and filling vases. Someone else had taken my place. I pulled out my phone, took photos, every angle I could get. Then I walked back to my car, hands shaking, and drove to the penthouse. I didn't cry, didn't scream, just sat on that cold leather couch and started making a list. The building manager mentioned my husband had been bringing someone else by. His name was Elms Carter, friendly, mid-50s, always in a suit. I ran into him in the lobby one morning. He smiled, asked how I was settling in. I said fine. Then casually, has my husband been by? I keep missing him. Elms nodded. Oh yeah, he was here last week, with a guest, showing her the rooftop terrace, I think. My stomach dropped. A guest? Yeah. Tall, dark hair, seemed nice. He said it so easily, so innocently, like it was nothing. I forced a smile. Oh, probably his sister. Maybe, Elms said, shrugging. He's been here a few times with her, actually. Thought you knew. I nodded, kept smiling. Of course. Thanks, Elms. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, waited, stepped inside. The doors closed, and I finally let myself breathe. A few times. Not once, a few times. Calden had been bringing someone to my building, to the penthouse he'd bought to keep me away from the house. He was parading her around, right under my nose. And Elms thought I knew. Thought I was fine with it. I wasn't fine. I was done. I didn't confront him. I started documenting. I opened a folder on my laptop, labeled it Records. Started saving everything. Screenshots of texts, photos of the house, dates and times. Calden said he was working late. Credit card statements I still had access to. Receipts for things I didn't recognize. Charges at restaurants we'd never been to. Purchases I'd never made. I called the bank, asked for copies of joint account activity. They sent it within 3 days. I printed everything. Highlighted the patterns, dinners for two, hotel stays, jewelry I'd never received. I hired a private investigator. Quietly. Paid cash, gave him Calden's schedule, the address of the house, the license plate of the car in the driveway. I didn't tell anyone, not my sister, not my friends, not even the lawyer I hadn't called yet. Because the moment I spoke it out loud, it became real. And I needed time. Time to process, time to prepare, time to build a case that would stand. So I documented, quietly, methodically, and waited for the truth to become undeniable. I learned the penthouse was purchased quickly, strategically. I met with Rowan Pike, a property attorney a friend had recommended. Told him I needed to understand my assets. He pulled records. The penthouse had been purchased 6 weeks before Calden gave me the keys. Cash sale, no mortgage, registered under both our names, marital property. He put it in both names? I asked. Rowan nodded. Standard for married couples, protects both parties, so I own half. You own half. I felt something shift. A small crack of power. Calden thought he was buying me off. Thought luxury would keep me distracted, compliant, grateful. But he'd made a mistake. He'd put my name on the deed, and that meant I wasn't just a tenant. I was an owner. Rowan leaned forward. Are you planning to file? I didn't answer right away, just stared at the documents in front of me. Proof, evidence, leverage. Not yet, I said finally, but soon. Rowan nodded, didn't push, just handed me his card. When you're ready. I took it and left. The penthouse suddenly felt different, less like a cage, more like a weapon. That's when I understood. He didn't move me for love, he moved me to make space. The pieces fell together, the quick purchase, the insistence on safety, the new key I never got, the unfamiliar car, the woman Elms mentioned, the changes in the house. Calden hadn't bought the penthouse to protect me. He'd bought it to clear the way, to move me out so he could move her in, without the mess of asking me to leave, without the confrontation of divorce, without the guilt of admitting he wanted someone else. He dressed it up as generosity, as care, as love. But it was erasure, strategic, calculated, cold. He wanted me gone, but he wanted me to go quietly, gratefully, without questions, and he'd almost succeeded. Almost. But I wasn't going quietly. I wasn't going to smile and nod and accept this beautiful cage and pretend I didn't see what he'd done. I was going to use it. Every piece of it. The penthouse, the documents, the patterns, the proof. I was going to take what he meant as an exit and turn it into an entrance. Into the truth. Into his downfall. And he'd never see it coming. I met with a lawyer quietly, asked questions I never thought I'd ask. Rowan introduced me to someone who specialized in divorce. Her name was Celine Rourke. Sharp. No nonsense. She sat across from me in a glass-walled office that smelled like expensive coffee and old leather. Tell me everything, she said, so I did. The penthouse, the key, the woman, the credit card charges, the private investigator I'd hired, the photos, the timeline. She took notes. Didn't interrupt. When I finished, she looked up. This is good. Very good. Good? You have documentation, proof of intent to deceive, proof of infidelity, and you own half of a very expensive penthouse he used to facilitate all of this. She smiled, not cruel, just satisfied. He handed you leverage. What happens now? Now, we build a case, quietly, file when the timing's right, freeze assets he thinks are untouchable, and make sure you walk away with what you're owed. I nodded, felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. How long? A few weeks, maybe a month. We want everything airtight. I stood, shook her hand. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when it's over. I left, and for the first time in months, I smiled. The penthouse wasn't just a gift, it was marital property. Celine confirmed it. Under state law, anything purchased during the marriage was jointly owned. Calden had put both our names on the deed, probably to avoid suspicion, probably to make it look legitimate. But in doing so, he'd given me power. The penthouse was worth $3.2 million. Half of that was mine, legally, undeniably, and if we divorced, I could force a sale or keep it outright as part of the settlement. Calden had no idea. He thought he was being clever, thought he was protecting himself by moving me out, by keeping me comfortable, by avoiding confrontation. But he'd underestimated me, underestimated my willingness to dig, to document, to fight. Celine filed preliminary paperwork, nothing public yet, just groundwork, asset lists, financial disclosures, building the case brick by brick, and I waited. Kept living in the penthouse, kept answering Calden's texts, kept pretending everything was fine. Because the longer he thought I was compliant, the more careless he'd become. And carelessness left trails. Trails I was collecting, one by one. I gathered proof, timelines, messages, security logs. The private investigator sent his report, 32 pages, photos, dates, locations. Her name was Vera Lind, 31, interior, designer. She'd been seeing Calden for 4 months. They met at a gallery opening. She'd consulted on a project for him, which I now knew was redecorating our house, my house. They'd been careful. No hotels, no public displays, just private dinners, late-night visits to the house, and trips to the penthouse before I moved in, to stage it, probably, to make sure it was ready for me. The investigator had security footage from the building, Calden and Vera entering together, twice. Laughing. Close. Familiar. I printed everything, added it to the folder, organized it by date, by location, by relevance. Messages I'd pulled from our shared cloud account, texts he thought were deleted, calendar entries he'd tried to hide. I had everything. Every lie, every evasion, every moment he chose her and pretended he was choosing me. It was all there. Documented, undeniable, ready. And Calden had no idea the case against him was already built. Vera moved in before the divorce papers were drafted. I found out from the investigator she'd changed her mailing address to our house. My house. She was living there, openly, officially. Calden hadn't even waited, hadn't finalized anything, just moved her in. Like I didn't exist, like our marriage didn't exist, like 6 years meant nothing. I sat in the penthouse, staring at the report, feeling something cold and final settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, fury. Quiet, controlled fury. He thought I was too distracted to notice, too grateful for the penthouse to ask questions, too comfortable to care. He was wrong. I called Celine. File. Now? Now. She didn't argue, didn't ask if I was sure, just said, I'll have the papers ready by tomorrow. I hung up, poured a glass of wine, walked to the window, looked out at the city, and waited. For the moment Calden would realize he'd made a terrible, irreversible mistake. For the moment he'd understand that the penthouse wasn't a gift. It was evidence. And I'd just weaponized it. He thought I was distracted by luxury. I was preparing an exit. The divorce papers were served 3 days later, at the house, by a process server who knocked on the door at 8 a.m. and handed them to Calden in front of Vera. I wasn't there, but the investigator was, across the street, taking photos. Calden called me 16 times that day. I didn't answer. He texted. Called again, left voicemails that ranged from confused to angry to desperate. Saren, what the hell is this? We need to talk. This is insane. Call me back. I didn't. I'd already said everything I needed to say. Through Celine, through the papers, through the evidence. The filing included a request to freeze joint assets, bank accounts, investments, properties, everything, pending full disclosure and settlement negotiations. It also included a request for immediate separation of living arrangements. Meaning, get Vera out of my house. Calden couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe I'd been paying attention. Couldn't believe I'd documented everything. Couldn't believe I'd hired a lawyer and built a case and filed without warning. He'd thought I was weak. Compliant. Easy. He was wrong. The divorce filing froze assets he thought were untouchable. Within 48 hours, Calden couldn't access the joint accounts, couldn't liquidate investments, couldn't sell property, couldn't move money. Everything was locked. Pending court approval, pending full financial disclosure. He called Celine's office, yelled at her assistant, threatened legal action. She didn't flinch, just sent a formal response outlining the legal grounds for every freeze, every hold, every request. He had no leverage, no recourse. The law was clear, and I'd followed it perfectly. He tried calling me again. I blocked his number. He showed up at the penthouse. I didn't answer the door. He stood in the hallway for 20 minutes, knocking, calling my name. The building manager finally asked him to leave. He left, but not before shouting through the door, "You can't do this." I could, and I did, because he'd underestimated me, underestimated my ability to learn, to adapt, to fight, and now he was learning the cost, slowly, painfully, publicly. Vera left when the money paused. The investigator confirmed it. 2 weeks after the filing, Vera moved out. No forwarding address, no explanation. She'd been with Calden for the lifestyle, the house, the money, the image. But when the accounts froze and the legal battle started and the reality of divorce set in, she left. Just packed her things and disappeared. Calden was alone, in a house that no longer felt like his, trapped in a marriage that was ending, facing a legal battle he couldn't win. I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt vindicated, because this was the consequence. This was what happened when you tried to erase someone, when you thought money could solve everything, when you underestimated the person you'd promised to love. Vera left, and Calden was left holding the wreckage, alone, desperate, realizing too late that the penthouse he'd bought wasn't a solution. It was a mistake, one that was about to cost him everything. The penthouse sold quietly, proceeds transferred legally. Celine negotiated the settlement. We kept it out of court. Faster, cleaner, less public. Calden agreed to almost everything. Probably because his lawyer told him he'd lose if we went to trial. Probably because the evidence was overwhelming. Probably because he just wanted it over. The penthouse sold in 3 weeks, $3.4 million. Over asking, half went to me, $1.7 million. Deposited directly into my new account, the one Calden couldn't touch. The house went to me too. Full ownership with the stipulation that he had 30 days to remove his belongings. He didn't fight it, didn't argue, just signed. I also got half the investments, half the savings, alimony for 3 years, and a clause that prevented him from contesting any of it. He walked away with less than he started with. And I walked away whole. Not broken, not destroyed. Whole. With money, property, freedom, and the knowledge that I'd outmaneuvered him, quietly, strategically, completely. He called once, said I never meant to hurt you. I saw his name on my phone, 6 months after the divorce was finalized. I was in my car, parked outside a coffee shop, debating whether to answer. I did. Saren. His voice was quiet, tired, high, silence. Then, I just wanted to say, I never meant to hurt you. I didn't respond. Just waited. I know that doesn't change anything. I know I messed up, but I need you to know that. Okay. Okay. You called to ease your guilt. I'm not interested in that. You hurt me. You lied. You tried to erase me. And you did mean it. You meant every choice you made. Saren, don't call again. I hung up, blocked the number, sat there for a minute, staring at the phone, feeling nothing. Not anger, not sadness, nothing. He'd meant to hurt me, maybe not consciously, but the impact doesn't change based on intent. And I'd stopped caring about his reasons. Stopped caring about his guilt. I'd moved on. Completely. And he was just a voice on a phone, a memory I no longer carried. I didn't answer. He bought space to hide his betrayal. I used it to disappear from his life completely. I sold the house 6 months later. Didn't need it. Didn't want it. Too many memories. Too much history. I bought something smaller. Mine. Just mine. Filled it with things I loved. Things that felt like me. I started over. New city. New job. New life. No traces of Calden. No reminders of the woman I'd been when I was trying to save a marriage that was already over. The penthouse had been his attempt to erase me. To move me out of the way so he could build a life with someone else. But in trying to erase me, he'd given me the tools to erase him. The property, the leverage, the proof. And I'd used it all. Quietly, methodically, completely. He'd bought space to hide his betrayal. I'd used it to disappear from his life. And in doing so, I'd found myself stronger, clearer, free. The penthouse was supposed to be my cage. Instead, it became my liberation. And Calden learned too late that some people can't be bought. Can't be erased. Can't be underestimated. I was one of them.